Greetings, traveler. I'm SnapJelly, and the longswords in Oblivion. Are they realistic? Or, if you would have one of them in an actual battle, would they be able to save your life? Well, first, to prevent some confusion, I'm gonna have to say two things. One is, usually, today in reenactment and HEMA, when people say longsword, they're referring to a two-handed medieval sword. But in Oblivion, the longswords are dedicated one-handed swords, so that's how I judge them. And the second thing is, none of these blades really have any fuller, but the blades are quite narrow, so I kinda just left it out completely. Just so you know. That being said, it was actually very easy to judge these weapons. They are way better than the Skyrim ones. So join me in my quest, and I'll tell you why. Starting off with the steel longsword. Now the reason I'm starting with this one is quite simply because I have nothing to say about it. It looks like an oakshot type 21 or maybe a type 22 to me. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with this one. So, next one. The next one is the silver longsword. Again, I have fairly little to say about this sword. The pommel seems a bit small, maybe, but you know, that's fine. It has hardly any profile taper, or maybe no profile taper at all. To me it seems like a very decorated version of an oakshot type 11. Next one is the iron longsword. Again, it looks pretty normal. The guard is a bit thicker than it needs to be, and there are these bumps in the blade at the top, which are not gonna do you any favors. They might get in the way a little bit. During the bind, if your opponent's sword will slide down your sword, it will be very clunky. If anything, they're not gonna do you any favors, but I honestly don't think in this case that it would be a huge problem, because the rest of the proportions of the sword are fine, so you could still use this normally. There's also a fine iron longsword, but it seems to have the same design, so. Next up is the fine steel longsword. Overall design, it's fine. It may just be that this picture is a bit weird, I don't know, but it seems to be very thick at the point. Which is not per se a problem. You could still stab someone with this fine. But it's not going to be a very good thruster because of that. Also, I don't know why the ricasso here is this thin. It's not per se bad. Yes, you could say that it's a weakness, but it would not be so weak that you can't use it. So those are some design details, but in overall, the design, there's nothing really wrong with it. Next up is the Dwarven longsword. Now, I don't know if it's the design or maybe just the color, but this one reminds me quite a lot of ancient bronze swords. So I'm thinking it was inspired by those. There's no real guard on this one, as you can see, but the blade and the grip seem absolutely fine. So if you use this with a shield so you can protect your hand, there really shouldn't be a problem. Next up is the Ebony longsword. Now, as much as I dislike the designs of the ebony swords in Skyrim, this one is actually not that bad. The grip is a bit too long for my taste, and the guard is a bit short and fat compared to the grip. But that's it, really. Other than those things, there's really nothing that prevents you from using this sword normally, so there you go. Next one is the glass longsword. The only thing that I could possibly whine about on this sword is again the small guard. But in that case, the same counts as what I said with the Dwarven longsword. If you use it with a shield, there shouldn't be a problem. Considering the material holds up, of course, which is something that I'm just gonna have to assume for all of these weapons, there shouldn't be an issue. The grip is fine, the blade is fine, everything is fine. Next up is the Daedric longsword. The Daedric. I don't know how you pronounce that. Okay, well, this one is a bit different. Still not an awful lot to complain about here, but sure, here we go. There's some added mass at the tip here, which would move the point of balance a bit further out into the blade, so that makes it more top-heavy and makes it more of a chopper than a stabber. Which, you know, honestly quite makes sense, because these ridges here, they're gonna make it difficult to pull your weapon back after you've stabbed someone. Now you guys might say that those are there to hurt the enemy more. If you would pull your sword out, it would kind of rip open your enemy. And yeah, I guess that's true. But even with normal swords, it's not unlikely for them to get stuck. It's very possible that your sword gets stuck after you've stabbed someone. So these things are just gonna make it more likely for the blade to get stuck. I don't know what this thing is, but I think that this is supposed to be the backside and this is supposed to be the front side of the sword, so I suppose it doesn't really matter. The guard is very small, obviously, but I've mentioned that before. And the grip is a bit long, but it looks like it should handle fine. There are no ridges on it. You should be able to grab this no problem. You might accidentally poke yourself with one of these spikes at the pommel when you swing, though. So those should have to go, but otherwise, it's not that bad. It could be a lot worse overall. And honestly, it is getting a lot worse. Because what the fuck is this? Oblivion, come on, you did so well for all the designs so far, and now... okay, this is the only real sword that I have actual complaints about here. This is the Elven longsword, and it looks just so out of place compared to the rest. I don't understand it. Main problem is you would not be able to hold this sword. There are several spikes on both sides of the guard pointing down. So they're gonna be poking you in your hand or your arm if you're trying to hold this thing. Stupid. The grip is actually a very good size. I like the proportions on the grip. But the spikes on the pommel make it dangerous to even reach for the damn thing. If you have it in a scabbard on your hip and you need to grab it in a hurry, if you accidentally grab it by the pommel, you'll stab yourself in the hand. These extensions here will catapult an enemy sword that's sliding down the edge of your sword over the guard and into your arm. And they also decided to make it wider at the top, unnecessarily I might say, so it's unnecessarily top heavy, as well as less nimble, and it also makes the tip wider, so it's going to be worse at stabbing. I guess you could chop with this, if you could hold it, which you can't. Yeah, this one is weird. The other ones were fine, but this one is just... no. So that was it, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to know more about the weapons in Oblivion, then you can click the button right here. And if you want to know if the swords in Skyrim are realistic, then you can click the button right here. And if you want to follow me on social media, then you can. Links are in the description below. And thank you for joining my quest, and I hope you'll join me in the next one. Bye, guys.